This will kind of be a bit of a return to form for me because I'll be talking about history again. But I found this interesting little article that I want to go over because it's quite interesting. Now, if you thought that America was the only bad guy in World War II, oh boy. Oh, sorry. Um, 8 incredible World War II POW stories of survival and escape. This is January 27, 2017, but I doubt it would have like changed at all between then and now because this really took place in the 40s. Thousands of men found themselves as unfortunate prisoners of war during a time when kindness toward the enemy was rare. The conditions they faced were brutal, and many never made it out of the camps alive. Many of those who managed to escape or survive have shared their amazing stories of how they made it through. Here are the stories of 8 men with some of the most remarkable and heartbreaking prisoner of war stories ever told. Andras Toma. Andras Toma was the longest held POW of World War II. Andras Toma was 19 when he was captured by the Soviet Union in the fall of 1944. He was placed in a POW camp east of Leningrad. When the war ended and plans were made to shut down the camp in 47, Andras Toma was sent to a mental hospital when the prison camp closed. Many believed him to be insane because he only spoke gibberish that no one could understand. As it turned out, the gibberish that Andras Toma was speaking was not gibberish at all, but Hungarian. The doctors at the mental hospital had never heard the language before, and therefore had no idea the man they kept in the hospital was perfectly sane. They had no idea for more than 50 years. So in the 90s. Finally, someone realized that what language he was speaking, and the Hungarian government undertook a search to find the man and his family. He was 75 when he was reunited with his family. Two of this siblings were just 7 and 1 when their brother was captured. Jeez, now they're in their 50s. But they recognized him as looking nearly identical to their father. Andras Toma was eager to have people to talk to again, though his old Hungarian tongue intermixed with Russian was hard to understand. He remembered many of the sights of his hometown, but he struggled to relay memories in any sort of chronological order. Toma died in Hungary in 2004. So this guy is William Ash of the BBC. William Ash. When Bill Ash became old enough, he gave up his United States citizenship and joined the Royal Canadian Air Force. Which, I know that kind of sounds like cowardice to some people, but, well, because he's giving up one citizenship to fight in a war for another country. Some see that as betrayal. Um, so I'm just letting you know. Air Force. He joined the Royal Canadian Air Force on June 20th, 1940. The following year, he was sent to England and joined the number 411 Squadron Royal Canadian Air Force. He was a successful pilot for more than a year before he was shot down over France in March of 42. He tried to make it back to England, but he was captured in Paris. Oh, sorry, my brain froze for a second. Back to England, but he was captured in Paris and sent to Uflag XX1-B Zubin, a POW camp in Poland. From the moment he set foot in the prison camp, he was willing to do anything to escape. His first attempt was through a shower drain. His second attempt was with 32 other prisoners through a latrine tunnel. The second attempt was successful, but Ash was recaptured after just 4 days of freedom. After that brazen escape, he was transferred to Stalag Luft 3 in Germany, where he quickly went to work on yet another escape plan. After 21 months, he managed to switch identities with another prisoner in order to get transferred to Stalag Luft 6 in Lithuania, where he worked with prisoners to dig a huge tunnel in preparation for an escape, much like the one at Oflag XXI-B Zubin. Unfortunately, the tunnel was discovered after only 2 men had made it through. Ash was one of the men that was able to get to freedom. He managed to get away and get on board a goods train that was headed to Kovno, Lithuania. Sadly, the station guards discovered him and he was immediately returned to Stalag Luft 6. Basically, Stalag is a prison camp, POW camp, so it's POW Camp Air 6. Throughout his years as a POW, Ash made 13 separate escape attempts, and 6 of those times managed to get beyond the walls of the prison camp. He was being held at Stalag Luft 3 at the time of the Great Escape, but he was not one of the prisoners involved because he was being held in the cooler as punishment for a previous escape attempt. He finally escaped for good in 1945 and made it to the British front lines. Like, this guy needs a medal for, like, being a stubborn bastard. Like, seriously, we need to start giving medals for people who just refuse to give up. Like, seriously, we need to admire that trait. I gotta open a pop. We need to admire that trait now. We need to admire it. Seriously, like, I don't know why we don't. Although, to be fair, the degradation of our society is pretty apparent. This man is Alistair Urquhart. This, I believe, was taken by the Mirror. That's him back in the day. That's him somewhat recently. Somewhat. Those are nice medals, actually. Looks like bronze stars. Nice. I think that's British, actually. My father was in the Air Force, for those who don't know, so I know a little bit about badges and all that stuff, a little bit. But the British badge system is very different compared to the American badge system, so I really can't tell. Wait, are those ribbons attached to the medals, or is that the badges themselves? I honestly can't tell. I can't make heads or tails of that. Alistair Urquhart was conscripted into the British Army in 1939 and was one of the Gordon Highlanders stationed at Fort Canning, Singapore. Oh yeah, this story's crazy. He was there when the Japanese invaded the island. Urquhart was taken prisoner and forced to work on a 420-kilometer-long section of the Burma-Siam Railway, surviving for years on nothing more than a cup of water and rice a day. He worked long, brutal hours in the sun and continuously suffered from numerous tropical illnesses. The overseers were particularly cruel, and at one point Urquhart was tied up for 2 days in the blistering heat of day and cold of night. They splashed cold water on him anytime he lost consciousness, trying to fall asleep. When his 2 days were up, he was locked in a tiny half-submerged cage for days on end. It took contracting and surviving cholera, to finally get away from the hellish slave camp. Even though he survived the cholera, he was left with dysentery. God. Oh, jeez. Malaria, beriberi, and he could not use his legs. What is this man, Job? What the fuck? God's playing cards with the devil, and fucking God's like, hey, I'll show you something crazy. Zap! And the devil's like, dude, what the fuck? Like, seriously. Like, God. His captor sent him to a hospital where he was kept for 6 months due to the grace of a doctor who took pity on him. But his captivity was not over, and in September 1944, he was loaded onto a Japanese hell ship where 900 British POWs were forced to stand in the dark, hot cargo hold. The ships were called hell ships, not only for the heat, but because men were known to go mad and resort to cannibalism. God, it's brutal. After 6 days, the ship was hit by a torpedo and sunk. Urquhart managed to get to a raft and floated on the open sea for 5 days. Get this, before he was picked up by a Japanese whaling ship. He was loaded onto another hell ship, and this one did reach Japan. Like, what? Finally, I'm free. Oh shit, I'm captured again. Like, what the fuck, guys? Instead of working on a railroad, Urquhart was now used as slave labor in a coal mine. He was so weak and ill that he could barely stand, making him useless in the mines. So he was moved to the camp hospital just 15 kilometers from Nagasaki. Oh boy. He was there when the atomic bomb was dropped in 1945, and he recalled being thrown sideways by the blast. Despite his weakened condition, he survived until the end of the war, when the British finally liberated him and other POWs held by the Japanese. His years of starvation and torture affected him for the rest of his life, but he lived to be 97 years old. Like this, what I just read to you, right? Being tortured, practically starved, used as hard labor. Like, are those medals enough? Seriously, is that enough? Is that proper penance for what this man had to endure? Getting diseases, surviving by the skin of his teeth, fucking, Jesus. Like, are these medals enough? You know, like, in war, we send countless men. And I'm not going to say and women, because we don't. We don't send women to the front lines. We don't. We never have. The last time we did, it was the Neanderthal doing it. Okay? And there's a reason they went extinct. Like, this man was tortured beyond belief. And this is all he has to show for it. A little placard with a couple medals on it. Like, now here's the thing. I know I'm kind of knocking the whole medal system, but at least he got that. At least he got a little placard that says, you did an amazing job. Good for you. You've earned this. At least. Right? I know that's kind of contradictory. Just hear me out. Like, you know, I would rather us give people who survive insane odds a medal, a little piece of metal. I'd rather give them that than tell them they're sexist oppressors of the only gender that counts. Why do you think men are checking out early so much? Because their life is on fucking insane mode, and what do they get for it? They don't even get a little, piece of fucking felt and metal with some fucking medals on it. They don't even get that. Nowadays, we just say, men, hey, you're not doing enough for women, you troglodytic ancestral troll. How dare you? And we kick them in the nuts and force them to work in the coal mines to prove their worth. Like, fuck. Okay, next guy. Douglas Bader, Daily Mail. I have not read this part down. I've read up to Urquhart. So, all these seem to be royal. They all seem to be British for some reason. Is this a British tabloid? A history collection? I assume not. Douglas Bader joined the Royal Air Force in 1928 and became a very skilled pilot. He flew for several years with the RAF until 1931, when he crashed while trying to perform a stunt. His wounds were so severe that doctors had no choice to amputate both of his legs. Oh my god. Despite the crash and his injury, Bader refused to be kept down. He was fitted with prosthetics, and he focused on flying again. Is that him with prosthetics? That might be, actually. That might be. The way he's sitting, I mean, you would assume so. He went back to the Royal Air Force, where he passed his medical clearance and proved that even with his prosthetic legs, he could still fly. He joined the war effort and flew several successful missions. His time in the sky was short-lived, however, as he was shot down in August 1942 and kept... Sorry. Something's going on with my throat today. I couldn't breathe for a second. Captured by the Germans. Them damn Germans. He was taken to the hospital at a Luftwaffe camp in France. The Germans were fascinated by Bader and were very impressed that he was able to pilot without any legs. Their fascination meant that Bader was given plenty of special treatment by his captors. Well, that's kind of neat. In one instance, the Germans were willing to provide safe passage for a British plane to airdrop a new prosthetic leg to replace one of Bader's that had been damaged in the crash. The plane dropped the leg over the prisoner camp and then used their safe passage to complete a bombing run. What? Wow, America, way to go. Bader did attempt to escape from the hospital by climbing through a window and then hiding out at a nearby home, but his escape was short-lived and he was returned to the camp. I mean, honestly, without legs, that's really ballsy. Like, I don't have legs, but you know what? I'm gonna flee. I'm gonna run away. Like, what? Despite the good treatment by the Germans, Douglas Bader was always looking for a way to escape. He made so many attempts that the German officers would threaten to take his legs away. Bader spent years as a POW and used them to sabotage the Germans every chance he could. He irritated his captors by attempting to escape constantly. Eventually, he overstayed his welcome and was sent to the escape-proof Kotelitz Castle in Germany, where he remained until the end of the war. Bader returned to England after the war and died in London in 1982. Jeez. Oh, hey. Oh, wow. We got one on the other side. Eric Hartman. Wow. Look at that cross. Holy shit. Are we even allowed to acknowledge this person existed, or is he really just a black trans woman? I can never tell nowadays. Is it Erich or Eric? It would be Eric. Eric Hartman. German pilot Eric Hartman scored numerous aerial victories and was considered to be one of the best flying aces of the war. He was just 18 when he started his military training in October 1940. He was assigned to Jagdgeschwader 52, sorry, I forgot how that worked for a second, and fought on the Eastern Front. When his unit was surrounded by American and Soviet forces at the end of the war, he commanded his unit to surrender. They were sent to an open-air compound to await transfer to the Soviet Union. The conditions at the camp gradually deteriorated as the number of prisoners grew to surpass 50,000. It was so bad that American guards would turn a blind eye to prisoner escapes. In some cases, the Americans would even provide maps or supplies to escaping prisoners. That's actually kind of neat. After the open-air camp, he was transferred to a POW prison where the Soviets realized that Hartman could be of use to them. His success as a pilot had made him something of a hero in Germany, and the Soviets wanted him as a spy to spread propaganda in East Germany. Hartman refused. As punishment, he was placed in 10 days confinement in a 4x9 by 6 foot chamber. Oh God. The Soviets realized that there was little they could do to Hartman to cause him to betray his men, so they threatened to kidnap and kill his wife. He still refused to convert to communism and went on a hunger strike. After 4 days, the Soviets began force-feeding him. Holy shit. On December 24th, 1949, he was officially arrested and 3 days later sentenced to 20 years in prison. He was charged with a number of false war crimes as the Soviets continued to try and break him. He refused to confess to any crimes, and his sentence was increased to 25 years hard labor. He refused to work and was placed in solitary confinement. The other prisoners revolted at Hartman's treatment, and he was transferred to another camp where he spent 5 years in solitary confinement. In 1955, after more than 10 years in Soviet prison camps, a trade agreement between West Germany and the Soviet Union was reached, which secured the release of 16,000 German military personnel, including Erich Hartman. He died in 1993 at the age of 71. Damn. So he was born in 1922. If he was born in 22, then he was 33 when he was released. Jeez. God. Okay, who's this Chad? Henry Gerard. I love the mustache. Very bushy. I like bushy mustaches. Henry Giraud. Henry Giraud joined the French army in 1900 at the age of 21. He was sent to command troops in North Africa until he was ordered back to France after the outbreak of World War I. On August 30th, 1914, he was seriously wounded in the Battle of Saint-Quentin. Left for dead, he was found by the Germans, who placed him in a prison camp in Belgium. He remained at the camp for only 2 months until he managed to escape by pretending to be a worker with a traveling circus. He made his way back to France by traveling through the Netherlands. He stayed with the military through the interwar period and was a member of the Superior War Council when World War II began. I'm slowly becoming German. He became the commander of the 7th Army, which was later merged with the 9th Army. He was on the front lines with a reconnaissance patrol when he was captured by the Germans on May 19, 1940. Giraud was taken to Königstein Castle in Germany, Kingstone, and he remained there for over 2 years. He devoted his time at the infamous castle to devising the perfect escape plan. The first part of his plan involved learning German and memorizing a map of the area. Then he made friends with some of the gods, who eventually agreed to smuggle him bits of twine and copper wire. He twisted the copper wire and twine with torn bed sheets in order to make 150 feet of strong rope. On April 17, 1942, he used the rope to climb down the cliff of the mountain prison. He shaved his distinctive mustache and met with a special operations executive who provided him a change of clothes and identity papers. Desperate to make it back to France, he constantly took on different disguises and identities in order to make it through enemy territory and back home. Once in France, he was contacted by President Eisenhower, who offered safe passage to him and his sons in exchange for help with the African front of World War II. Damn. Hold on. So he was 21 in 1900. Damn. So he was in his 60s when all this happened. Damn. Okay. Another German, I think. I don't recognize the name. Iri Neve was a man who was willing to do whatever it took to end his time as a POW. In February 1940, he was assigned to the 1st Searchlight Regiment, Royal Artillery in France. Oh, French, okay. He was wounded at Calais in 1940 and was taken captive by the German army. He made short work of escaping from the first prison camp, but was recaptured a few days later. He was interrogated by the Gestapo after he was recaptured, an experience that he solemnly remembered as unpleasant. The Gestapo are the definition of unpleasant, trust me on that. I've heard some stories, motherfucker. Unwilling to risk another escape, the Germans transferred Neve to the escape-proof Koeltitz Castle. From the moment he was imprisoned at the castle, he had a fanatical desire to escape. His first attempt came a mere 6 weeks after his imprisonment. Neve thought if he could convince the guards he was one of them, he could get past the gates and out of the prison. So using materials from the theater department, he made himself a German uniform. However, as soon as he made it out of the castle, the scenery paint he had used to make his clothes shone a very bright green under the searchlights. After another long interrogation, Neve was returned to the prison at Koeltitz. Oh my god. That's awful. That's fucking terrible. Oh, that's a horrible. Oh my god, that's awful. Fuck. The conditions at Koeltitz were not ideal, as Neve was poorly fed and badly treated during his stay. He never stopped trying to come up with a way to escape and ended up working with a Dutch prisoner named Anthony Luton. The pair improved under Neve's original escape plan when both of them were wearing German uniforms that they had created. Working with the theater gave them the perfect cover for their uniform creation and a way out. During a Saturday night prison review, the two escaped through a trap door in the stage. Once outside the walls of the castle, Neve managed to make it 400 miles to the Swiss border. From there, he managed a boat to England and became the first British officer to escape from Koeltitz and make it all the way back home. Wow. What about the other dude that was with him? It was him and one other dude, wasn't it? Ah, that's a German name. Gus Unkorn. Oh, I guess not. Fuck. Well, I mean, that's not a German uniform. At least I don't think it is. Um, Looks more American. Gus Ankhorn. He was there for 3 days when an anti-personnel bomb was dropped just 10 feet from the truck he was driving. Ankhorn was severely wounded by the blast and was rushed to the hospital. His luck at surviving the blast was short-lived, as he was transferred to the hospital right before the Alexandria massacre. Oh my god. Gus was still covered in blood and lying in the hospital bed when 100 Japanese soldiers entered the hospital. Those unable to walk were bayoneted in their beds. Those who could walk were marched outside and shot. Unwilling to watch his own demise, he covered his face with a pillow and awaited his own bayonet wound. It never came. Ankhorn was taken as a POW and sent to work on the Burma Railway. Still weak from his prior wounds, he struggled to meet the demands of the Japanese overseers who wanted him to climb a 100-foot aqueduct, where he could not keep up. One of the overseers poured hot tar down his back. Oh my god. The burns from the tar nearly killed Ankhorn, and he was sent to a hospital camp. This dude in hospitals, I swear to fuck. All the men who had been working on the aqueduct with him died in a matter of weeks as Ankhorn recovered in the hospital. He was then sent back to work. The men were starved and beaten regularly. Jeez. Like, compare this. This is mostly the really fucked up ones in this list of how prisoners are treated. Most of the really fucked up ones are Asian. Japanese mostly. But, like, Japan was far more evil than people want to give them credit for in World War II. They were fucking villains. Like, y'all think the Nazis were bad. Seriously. The Japanese were much, much worse. Fuck the story earlier. The Germans, helping that man who had fucking no legs and shit and had prosthesis on his legs. The Germans were actually kind to him. And, they gave him special treatment. Now, the question is, did him trying to escape and then sabotaging them, was that the right thing to do? Because they did treat him with kindness and respect. Right? Now, fast forward some 20, 30 years into John McCain, who was given special treatment by the Viet Cong and then made propaganda films for them in return. Now, I think at the German hospital, being cooperative, within reason, not telling them any secrets or anything, but not trying to escape or set their buildings on fire, I think that's okay to do. Personally, I think that's not betraying your country. But making propaganda films for the enemy because they treat you well, that's betraying your country. Okay? So, yeah. Just a little thought there. Where was I? Yeah. Ankhorn was well traversed in magic, and he used his skills to distract the guards so he and other prisoners could steal food. Once he took 49 eggs from the kitchen and gave them to the men to eat, telling the guard that he needed to practice a trick. In August 1945, as the Allies were closing in on Japan, Ankhorn and 4 others were put in front of a firing squad. But instead of being shot, the Japanese soldiers started arguing among each other, likely about being charged with war crimes. He was led back to the camp where he was soon liberated by Allied forces. Holy shit, like... Was that really 8? Yeah, I guess that was 8. Holy shit. Okay, so yeah, like... You guys really think that Germany was the ultimate bad guy in that situation? Like, worse than Russia? Worse than Japan? Really? In terms of evil, in that conflict, from least to greatest. Least was Italy. Second least was Germany. Second greatest was Japan. And greatest evil was Russia. I'm not saying that because I hate communism. Actually, if I did, I'd probably put the first two closer towards the last two. Because they were derived from communism, right? The reason why I say Russia is because if you look at the death numbers, if you look at the totals, the starvation deaths alone, just that one instance of Stalin being a flagrant fuck-up is when they surpassed Germany in terms of killing people. And it was their own people. It wasn't the enemy in war, which that's how wars are fought. You kill the enemy before the enemy kills you. That's just what it is. You know? Like, they killed their own people. Russia did. Starvation. Because they killed all the farmers. Now, one of the major differences between fascism and communism is that fascism doesn't kill all the farmers. It bankrupts the economy, but hey, at least you have food. At least you have food. So, keep that in mind. And they are very intertwined. Mussolini was actually the head of the Milan Communist Party, the Milan Socialist Party. He was actually the head of that. And he later became a member of the Communist Party. Member of the Fascist Party later on. Fascio di Combattimento. That was his thing later on. But originally, he was the leader of the Socialist Party in Milan, the Milan chapter. And him and, I forget who, but him and another guy come up with fascism based on socialism. That's why it's called National Socialism. It's socialism for the nation. And just the nation. It's not for, the world, as Stalin thought. But what's more evil, right? Controlling your nation or controlling the world? Just in general, like, what can cause more death and suffering and difficulty and damnation? What can fuck up things more, if you're a tyrant in control of a small state, a big nation, or the fucking globe? So, yeah, that's when people say Nazism is fucking more deadly or more evil than communism. Typically, they're a communist, first of all. And second of all, they're wrong. They're absolutely wrong. If you look at the number of people both ideologies have killed, keep in mind, Russia predominantly killed their own people. Right? So, a little more evil, killing your own people than the enemy's people. Just saying. And also, here's a little random fact for you people. Hitler, basically, actually, he looks like a kid I used to know. Hitler had drawn up plans for a museum of Jewish antiquity that was in his bunker. Right? We found that in his bunker. He wanted to make a museum to commemorate the Jewish people. Now, question being, if you hate someone so much you want to exterminate their race, why would you then build a memorial to them? Doesn't quite add up, does it? Just saying. Someone's lying. So. Okay. Alright. 8 incredible World War II POW stories of survival and escape. That's what that was, by Stephanie Schoppert. Wow, I wonder what race she is. Jeez. Schoppert. Schoppert mein Herr. Ah. No, Von Herrgott und Licht. No, anyways, yes, I do speak German. Not as fluently as I would like to, but I can get by. I can get by. I know enough to get by. I used to know more, but I haven't really kept up on it as I should have. Though Ayla's learning it. I'm teaching her slowly throughout time. She wants to do like a slow over time process. She doesn't want to, break out the books and do the studying just yet, which is fine. People learn at their own pace. I'm looking at Shadow right now, and he is just curled in a little cat ball with his little cat limbs dangling, and he's just so adorable, so adorable. It's my little kitty cat. I want to pick him up and hold him, but that would wake his ass up. Anyways, so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this. Kind of another history video, I guess. Ta-ta for now. Olay.